Hi, Encik Khalid. I will be presenting the number one topic out of the three topics that you've given me. So let's start with geopolitical dynamics and diplomacy, looking into what is Malaysia's soft power and how we can improve it. Let's see why geopolitics and diplomacy are important. To others, it might just seem like, okay, we should have good relationships with other countries. It's more than that. Once we have effective diplomacy, it creates trust between countries. And with that, it facilitates investments and information sharing, which also would trickle down to hopefully an increase employment within our shores. Let's look at why we need to improve Malaysia's diplomacy or geopolitics in the first place. Let's look at Malaysia's FDI. It has been decreasing since 2021. It peaked at 2021. And now, out of the selected Southeast Asia countries, Singapore is way on top, easily four or five times more FDI than Malaysia. Malaysia is ranked fourth out of these neighboring countries. Besides the decreasing trend of FDI, we also have a rise in underemployment. You can see here from a screenshot that almost 2 million highly educated Malaysians are underemployed. So looking at our country's economic problem, we have a decreasing trend in FDI. We also have a rising underemployment trend. With good diplomacy and good geopolitics, we can help increase the FDI and in turn will and provide more employment for our country. How do we kickstart it? We need to look at our soft power strategy. Soft power strategy enables effective diplomacy and it creates trust within countries. Leading examples would be Japan with their anime and manga. Japanese culture is considered an aesthetic, and with South Korea, there's no need to say how much their K-pop and K-drama has influence around the world. Let's look at Malaysia's soft power strategy. First, we recently, our Prime Minister has invited, I think sometime last year, many Muslim world leaders to come over to Malaysia. And we have Malaysia now sitting in neutrality, saying that, hey, we are not on China or USA side, so please invest in us because we're not. Please, you can open up your, for example, data centers here or factories here because Malaysia is not leaning on one side or the other. There is also our Visit Malaysia campaign. Our recent one would be Visit Malaysia 2026 campaign. Its goal is to make Malaysia a world-class tourist destination. Now let's see that these strategies have been existing since forever actually. The Malay Peninsula, you can call it, it has been a hot trading zone with the Muslim world since ages ago, since the medieval ages. And with regards to neutrality, Malaysia has always been in a neutral stance, probably ever since it joined and created the Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality in 1971. Also, Visit Malaysia has been ongoing every year or so. It first launched in 1990. It's time to add more. Let's propose to create a soft power with the music industry. And the film industry. Looking at the music industry, our Malaysian musicians are quite successful in collaborating, for example, with other countries. For example, Indonesia. Ernie Zakri, a Malaysian singer, collaborated with Adi Govinda, and they managed to produce a hit song that is very well famous in Indonesia. Again, if the government was involved in this would be good diplomacy. There's also MOUs signed between Malaysia and Indonesia musicians unions. Let's recommend to have government to government or G2G collaborations with Indonesia, China, or maybe India. That way, we can connect our Malaysian musicians with more musicians and they can learn from artists and musicians from Indonesia and China because their music industry there, the entertainment industry there is so much more big and so much more subjectively better than ours. And also to provide more funding to the local music industry because they are already much deprived of funding. How about the film industry? It goes without saying that Michelle Yeoh is our star. There are also other Malaysian born actors, such as the two actors from Crazy Rich Asians and Ronnie Chang. He's a very famous comedian. They all went overseas to be successful. Also, lastly, Wolf of Wall Street, although yes, very controversial and illegally funded, it was a outrageous success. It was a success. So what if we had the government collaborate, for example, with Hollywood, the Western world, to create more Malaysian themed movies and provide more funding? That way we can boost the film industry as well as improve diplomacy and relationships with other countries. We have our music industry looking to the east, and we have our film industry looking to the west. It creates a two-directional east and west thing. And that leads to neutrality even more maintained, which further enables Malaysia to be a good comfort zone to pick for investments. With the music and film industry being supported by the government, this may and will hopefully lead to a culture export, similar to Japan's export of anime, which I would like to note is almost on par with Japan's metal and steel exports. So there we go. We have a new soft power strategy to improve effective to improve the effectiveness of diplomacy and create trust between countries. That way, it will lead to hopefully more FDIs coming into our country, Malaysia. And with more FDIs, this would lead to an increase of employment opportunities for our Malaysians. Of course, this study is very brief and there are limitations. First of all, it is a very brief analysis. There was no robust empirical analysis done. And of course, it would be ideal to have more data of the music and film industries in Malaysia to see what's trending, who actually requires funding, which areas actually require funding. Regardless, this proposal, all proposals and all soft power strategies, I believe should undergo program evaluation. That way, we are able to measure the effectiveness and efficiency. For example, Visit Malaysia campaigns. Do they actually work? We need to look into that instead of just referring to, oh, there's an increased tourism in Malaysia. I'm sure there's also increased tourism in Thailand, Indonesia, or Vietnam. So how do we set apart from the rest? Thank you very much, Mr. Khalid, for listening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present this.